Right now, Canadians are quietly watching $5,000 of their hard-earned home equity vanish into thin air every single day. We are standing in the middle of the most devastating housing market crash in Canadian history, with prices completely collapsing by up to 30% in major markets. From pre-construction buyers losing their entire life savings to 2 million families facing a catastrophic mortgage renewal cliff this year, the dream of stability has turned into a financial nightmare. If you want to know how deep this crash will go and how to protect your family from the fallout, you need to hear the truth that the politicians and developers are trying to desperately hide. The illusion of equity and the daily bleed. Welcome back to Tax Hack Pro. We need to have a very serious, completely unfiltered conversation about the reality of the Canadian economy in 2026. For years, the mainstream media, real estate agents, and government officials sold Canadians on a single, undeniable premise: real estate only goes up. You were told to stretch your budget, borrow from your parents, and take on massive amounts of debt because getting into the market was the only way to secure your financial future. But that narrative has completely shattered, and the math we are looking at today is absolutely terrifying. When we say Canadians are losing $5,000 a day in home equity, we are not speaking in hyperbole. We are talking about a systemic destruction of middle-class wealth. Imagine waking up every single morning, going to work, and realizing that your house lost more value while you were driving to the office than you will earn in an entire month. I have reviewed the catastrophic case studies, like the detached house in Oshawa that was enthusiastically purchased for $1.8 million at the absolute peak of the frenzy in 2022. That exact same property recently sold for $1 million. That is an $800,000 evaporation of wealth. That is a lifetime of savings gone, and this is not an isolated incident. It is a feature of the new Canadian reality. If you want to understand the forensic financial data behind these market crashes and learn how to protect your capital before the banks come knocking, make sure you subscribe to Tax Hack Pro. We break down the complex economic traps that the system sets for everyday people, so hit that subscribe button right now and join the community. The epicenters of the collapse. Toronto and Vancouver. To truly understand the scale of this disaster, we have to look directly at the epicenters, Metro Vancouver and the Greater Toronto Area. The Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation has reported that there are currently about 2,500 brand new condos sitting completely empty in Metro Vancouver. That number is double what it was just last year. These are supposed to be premium assets, but instead, they have become dead weight on the balance sheets of investors who simply cannot find buyers or renters to cover the astronomical carrying costs. But Toronto is where the numbers become truly apocalyptic. Recent data from the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board shows a relentless downward trajectory. Detached homes in Toronto that peaked at an average of $1.6 million in the summer of 2022 have cratered down to roughly $924,000. Entire neighborhoods are seeing detached houses and townhomes plummet by nearly 30%. The condo market is arguably in worse shape, with prices aggressively sliding all the way back to 2019 levels. Freehold properties have retreated to early 2021 levels. You might hear real estate optimists claim that lower prices are a good thing for affordability. But here is the brutal, unforgiving truth about the 2026 market. The actual cost of owning the property has not improved at all. Sure, the sticker price of the home has dropped, but the interest rates are still sitting at a level that fundamentally breaks household budgets. Back in 2021 and early 2022, buyers were locking in variable and fixed rates well under 2%. Today, those rates are hovering around 5%. That means even though the purchase price is lower, the massive increase in the interest portion of the mortgage payment means a family is paying thousands of dollars more every single month just to keep a roof over their heads. The weight on the average Canadian has not lifted, it has compounded. The pre-construction nightmare and appraisal gaps. Perhaps the darkest corner of this housing crash is the pre-construction market. During the boom, buying a condo before it was built felt like a guaranteed path to wealth. You put down a deposit, waited 4 years, and by the time the building was finished, the condo was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars more. But in 2026, that strategy has turned into a financial slaughterhouse. In the Greater Toronto Area alone, there are 22,000 pre-construction condos scheduled to be completed this year. Financial experts and actuaries are predicting that up to 35% of these buyers could absolutely default on their closing obligations. Why? Because of the appraisal gap. Let's run the actual math on this so you can see the trap. Imagine you signed a contract in 2021 to buy a pre-construction condo for $500,000. You put down your hard-earned deposit, maybe $100,000, and waited. Now, in 2026, the building is finished and it is time to secure your final mortgage, but the market has crashed. The bank sends their appraiser to the building, and the appraiser says the condo is now only worth $400,000. The bank will only lend you money based on the current $400,000 valuation. But your legally binding contract with the massive corporate developer still says you owe them $500,000. Suddenly, you have a $100,000 appraisal gap, and you have to come up with that cash out of your own pocket immediately, right at closing. The vast majority of everyday Canadians simply do not have an extra $100,000 sitting in a checking account. When the buyer cannot close, the nightmare truly begins. I have seen the devastating stories of buyers, like a man named Victor Almeida, who lost a $130,000 deposit because of a market collapse he never saw coming. And if you think the developer will just take the deposit and let you walk away, you are completely wrong. These corporate developers have massive legal teams. They will aggressively chase you through the court system, they will sue you for breach of contract, and they will win. They can garnish your future wages and place liens on any other assets you might hold. People are being backed into financial corners so tight that some are actively considering abandoning the country entirely just to escape the crushing legal and financial ruin. The 2026 mortgage renewal cliff. If the pre-construction crisis is a localized disaster, the impending mortgage renewal cliff is a nationwide economic earthquake. I have been warning about this specific event for years, and now it has officially arrived. Between 1.2 and 2 million mortgages are coming up for mandatory renewal this year across Canada. These are families who locked in those beautiful, rock-bottom 2% interest rates back in 2021. Now, they are being forced to renew at current market rates. For hundreds of thousands of households, this means their monthly mortgage payment is going to violently jump by 15 to 20%. We are not talking about cutting back on a few restaurant dinners or canceling a streaming subscription. We are talking about finding an extra $1,000, $2,000, or even $3,000 every single month in pure after-tax income just to give directly to the bank. Multiply that individual suffering across the entire country, and you realize that Canada's total mortgage debt is on track to blow past $2 trillion. That is $2 trillion with a T. And the strain is breaking the back of the professional class. It is not just speculative investors who are hurting. We are seeing highly educated professionals, doctors, surgeons, pharmacists making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, struggling to survive the cost of living crisis. Commercial rents and residential mortgages have become so completely disconnected from reality that medical offices are being forced to shut down because the doctors literally cannot afford the lease payments. This is actively bleeding into the national delinquency rates. Take Saskatchewan, for example, which has recorded the highest mortgage delinquency rate for 31 consecutive quarters. That statistic represents decades of homeowners feeling a relentless, suffocating financial squeeze. The system that was fundamentally supposed to protect the middle class has completely broken down, leaving families exposed to ruthless market forces. To make sure you're not caught completely off guard when your renewal letter comes in the mail, hit subscribe to Tax Hack Pro. We provide the exact financial strategies you need to negotiate with your lender and protect your household cash flow during this unprecedented crisis. Geopolitics, tariffs, and the political disconnect. You cannot analyze a financial crash of this magnitude without looking at the macro-level political and geopolitical forces pouring gasoline on the fire. Up until late last year, many economists were incredibly hopeful that 2025 and 2026 would bring a soft landing and a smooth recovery to the Canadian housing market. They believed interest rates would drop significantly and stability would return, but the global landscape changed dramatically. With the shifting electoral outcomes in the United States and the aggressive implementation of President Trump's sweeping economic tariffs, a massive wave of global uncertainty has slammed into the Canadian economy. These aggressive trade policies have severely delayed any chance of an immediate economic recovery, pushing the timeline for market stabilization forward by at least a year or more. The Bank of Canada is now caught in an impossible trap. They want to lower interest rates to save the housing market from complete collapse, but they are terrified of reigniting inflation or destroying the value of the Canadian dollar in the face of aggressive American trade policies. And internally, the political situation is absolutely maddening. Everyday Canadians remember Prime Minister Justin Trudeau going on national television just a few short years ago, actively encouraging citizens to go out and get mortgages, while interest rates were supposedly going to stay low for a long time. People listened to their leaders, took on the debt, and are now paying the ultimate crushing price. Meanwhile, the current administration's flagship programs, like the massive Build Canada Homes initiative, have been bogged down in crippling bureaucracy and have completely failed to stabilize the market. Then you have incredibly wealthy, highly connected financial elites like Mark Carney stepping into prominent roles, while the massive banking institutions continue to report record-breaking profits. The banks are doing perfectly fine, while ordinary Canadians are drowning in negative equity. The contrast is deeply brutal. Consider the fact that the federal government recently allocated $3.7 billion for military housing, with the cost per unit breaking down to an absolutely absurd $600,000 each. While everyday citizens are fighting off foreclosure and struggling to buy groceries, the government is dramatically overpaying for basic infrastructure. It is incredibly hard for the average taxpayer not to feel like the entire system is deliberately designed to protect the elites, the banks, and the developers, while leaving the working class to absorb all of the financial damage. A glimmer of hope, the modular housing disruption amidst all of this systemic chaos, corruption, and financial destruction, there is a small but highly significant glimmer of hope emerging from the private sector. The traditional way we build houses in Canada, relying on massive, slow-moving developers, incredibly expensive union labor, and endless municipal red tape, is completely broken. But companies focusing on modular housing are attempting to entirely rewrite the rules of real estate development. I have been closely following IGV Housing and their massive project out in Port Alberni, British Columbia. Instead of dealing with the delays and astronomical costs of traditional construction sites, they are building what they call smart core homes directly inside highly efficient, climate-controlled factories. The entire core of the home, the fully finished kitchens, the plumbed bathrooms, the complex HVAC systems, are all built and assembled on a rapid production line, and then they are seamlessly shipped out for final installation on the property. The financial math on this is incredibly disruptive. These entry-level modular homes are coming in at roughly $150 per square foot, and an entire home can be ready for a family to move into in just 4 weeks. IGV Housing has set a highly ambitious goal of pumping out 2,000 to 3,000 of these homes every single year. This is exactly the kind of highly scalable, faster, and dramatically cheaper solution that the Canadian market desperately needs to circumvent the corporate developer monopoly. High-level politicians like Minister Robinson have started showing significant interest in this model, hinting at the potential for massive national expansion. Now, let's be perfectly clear. Modular housing is not a magic bullet. It is not going to instantly solve the $25 billion federal financing delays, and it certainly will not wipe away the massive wave of pre-construction defaults and mortgage delinquencies crashing into the courts right now. But in a bleak landscape that has been absolutely full of empty political promises and bureaucratic failures, modular construction represents something tangible. It is a genuine lifeline for young families who have been completely priced out of the traditional market, offering a small but highly meaningful path to actually getting people into stable homes without signing their lives away to massive debt. Surviving the crash, why timing the bottom is a trap. The absolute number one question I get in my consulting business every single day from terrified buyers and anxious sellers is, when is the market going to hit the absolute bottom? People are desperately staring at the charts, looking for the perfect moment to jump back in. To hear this loud and clear, trying to time the bottom of this specific market is a massive, highly dangerous financial trap. I have been forensically analyzing these neighborhood charts for years. From the prestigious Beaches neighborhood in Toronto, where detached homes plunged from 2.5 million down to 2.35 million, and semi-detached properties collapsed from 1.8 million down to 1.36 million, the trend is painfully consistent. There is absolutely no flat line anywhere in the data. There is no structural signal of stability. Reasons for this specific market slowdown are vastly different from previous historical crashes. If you remember the devastating housing crash of 1989 and 1990, that event was driven by sky-high mortgage rates sitting at a punishing 18 to 20%. It was an economic recession triggered directly by the crushing cost of borrowing. Today, the crisis is entirely different. We have massive, bloated inventory levels colliding with a paralyzed buyer pool that has been completely frozen by broad economic instability, inflation, and a lack of employment security. The reality of the 2026 market is this. If you are choosing to buy a property today, you must mentally and financially prepare for a minimum 5-year hold strategy. You have to completely abandon the toxic mindset of the pandemic era, where people treated real estate like a highly leveraged, short-term stock market trade. Short-term gains are completely gone. If you attempt to flip a property or hold for anything less than 5 years right now, you are recklessly gambling in the middle of a Category 5 financial storm. The market is still bleeding heavily. The massive wave of mortgage renewals has not fully processed through the system, and there is absolutely no quick fix coming from the federal government. Prices are technically a great opportunity for highly capitalized buyers and patient renters who have been desperately trying to claw their way into the market. However, real estate actuaries are already warning that the current massive drop in pre-construction sales is going to eventually translate into a severe lack of housing starts and completions 3 to 4 years down the road. We are setting the stage for a massive supply shortage in the future, which makes navigating the current landscape incredibly complex. An housing crash is not just red arrows and declining numbers on a digital screen. It is real life. It is real families watching their life savings evaporate. It is the absolute destruction of the financial security that the middle class worked decades to build. The bad news continues to feed the worst news, but there is still a path forward if you plan wisely, ignore the mainstream media optimism, and strictly follow the mathematical data. Strategy and patience matter vastly more than luck in this environment.